Hey everybody, we're back for some more math. I need to talk about the last problem from yesterday. I totally messed that thing up at the end because I subtracted the wrong problem. Everything I did was fine until I got to the end, and I was kicking myself for making that mistake. We get to the answer 27/60th, and I realized even then I still made a mistake because I said at the end of the video that was in simplest form. I was frazzled. I was up against the time. This recorder thing that I have only gives me 15 minutes, and I was right up against the clock. And then when I looked at it after I got done moping around for, feeling down on myself for making a mistake and messing things up for you, I saw that I can still simplify this. So again, I left a video in there. I thought, you know what? We all make mistakes. You guys have seen me do it in class. It's easy to do when you're doing all these problems in a row. So trust me, I definitely understand it can happen as I showed you right there. Even an adult who teaches math can make mistakes every now and then. But let's go back to that one just real quick. 27/60 is the answer, but as I looked closer at that, it's even still not in simplest form, okay? So if I go ahead and I'm going to actually put this into simplest form, take my 27/60. 27 and 60, we can divide each of those by 3, okay? And then that's going to get us into simplest form. So just to recap and fix up and hopefully not make any more mistakes, 27 divided by 3 would give us 9. 60 divided by 3 would give us 20. So in the end, we get 9/20ths. Again, I realize I might have totally thrown you for a loop there with all my errors and subtracting the wrong numbers at first. But anyway, this is how it should look. 55/60ths minus 28/60ths leaves 27/60ths, which simplifies to 9/20ths. So in the end, again, this is a yucky problem. 11/12ths minus 7/15ths is 9/20ths. So let's move on. Okay, hopefully on our homework, we're not going to see too many ones like that. They're a little bit more basic. What you had after that yesterday to go over just a few word problems here that we're going to go through and get back on track. And then I'll just kind of give you a couple heads up for the homework that you have for today, and then go online to turn those in by selecting your answers there. We just had 4 word problems here. I had to skip a few that were a little more than what I want you to worry about. Here we have number 17. Sarah's making a keychain using the bead design shown. What fraction of the beads in her design are either blue or red? So the way this is worded, it could be either or, so we need to have like a total amount of blue and red together, okay? If we look at these, we can talk about our denominator being the number of total beads there are. Now, if you look at them all, we have 3 down, 5 across, makes 15 total. So we can fill in 15 for our denominator here. If we wanted to, we could count how many red and how many blue. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue, which we could say 6/15ths plus 5/15ths would add up to our answer. Or we could just count them all together from the get-go, and we're going to get 11/15ths there. So 11/15ths is the fraction for this one. Okay. Then we're going to get into 19. For this one, we've got a couple steps going on. This is all about subtracting. So if we read the word problem carefully, it says Tom has 7/8 of a cup of oil. That's how much he starts with. He uses half a cup to make salad dressing, and he uses another 1/4 of a cup to make tomato sauce. So how much olive oil does he have left? So he takes an amount, he uses some for something, uses some for another thing, and then how much is remaining? That means we need to subtract. And again, we're going to do that by using our equivalent fractions, okay? So let's start off. Let's just say let's go step by step. First, he has this much olive oil, 7/8 of a cup, and he uses half to make a salad dressing. So let's just talk about from that one, how much would he have left after he does that? Okay, so we're going to take a subtraction here. We're going to do 7/8 minus, let me make these a little bigger. 7/8 are going to be subtracted 1/2. So 7/8 is what we start with. And we're going to say minus 1/2. So 7/8 minus 1/2, that's something we can work out, but we are going to have to work on some equivalent fractions first. So let's talk about that. Minus 1/2. 7/8 minus 1/2 we can't do. What we can do is take our 7/8 and turn our 1/2 into eighths, and we can subtract that. So then we can do, what would that be? If we can actually make our half into eighths. So I'm going to do this. Let's think, what do we have to do for our 1/2? So to go from 1/2 into eighths, 2 times 4 would make 8. So 1/2 would be equal to 1 times 4 would be 4/8, okay? And then we can do our subtraction. So 7/8 minus 4/8 would leave us with 3/8, right? So that's like our step 1. So 3/8 is what we get here. Oops. And then that's like only step 1 of our problem. We have to do the rest now. Now we've got 1/4 of a cup to make tomato sauce. So we have 3/8 remaining after he makes the salad dressing, but then he's also going to make some yummy tomato sauce too. He's going to have spaghetti to go with his salad, but he needs some olive oil for both. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do minus 1/4 of a cup, and then again we've got to do some equivalent fractions work. Okay, so then we're going to do. Let me just see if I can draw it in. We're going to do minus a 1/4. So 3/8 is what we have left after we make the salad dressing. And we subtract 1/4 of a cup to be able to get to how much he has left after tomato sauce. Now again, 3/8 I can still use. I'm going to keep that 3/8. And then we're going to subtract eighths. So we're going to turn our fourths into eighths. So how do I get from there? 1/4, 4 times 2 would make 8. So 1 times 2 would of course be 2. Now we're going to subtract again, and we're going to get our final answer. So again, notice we're doing a few steps here. These are just basic simple fractions, all using eighths as our common denominator. And then we get 3/8 minus 2/8 would make 1/8 of a cup left, okay? So there we have that. Again, we can go up here, say 1/8 of a cup is left over, or we can just say 1/8 of a cup. I'll just do C, okay? So there we go for that. Again, just that's kind of more just to kind of get you thinking about we need to subtract, we need to do multiple steps, we need to use the same skills of having those common denominators to help us through that, okay? All right, let's go to page 378. We had a couple of problems. This is a good one to look at because we need to think about if we talk about this practice, what is that fraction we'd be talking about here? For this one, we're talking about on Friday, 1/6 of band practice was spent trying on uniforms. The band spent 1/4 of practice on marching, and the remaining practice time was spent playing music. So what fraction of practice time was spent playing music? In this case, we need to think how much of like practice of a whole practice is there? And that's where we need to think of like a whole part, okay? With the whole practice, we can think of it as like one band practice, okay? And then we can break it into fractions. So what we actually want to think of here, if I have like, we're going to take like one band practice and we're going to subtract 1/6. Okay. So then we have to think of equivalent fractions. So we also talked about as fractions, we can do any time a numerator and denominator are the same, that's equal to 1/2, like 4/4 would be the whole pizza. 6/6 would be the whole practice if we want to think of it that way. So since our first step is we're going to, again, subtract to find out how much time is left at the end to play music. They spent 1/6 of the time for that. So if we subtract and find how much, we can start by saying, let's just say the whole practice is like 6/6 of a practice. We're going to do 6/6, and we're going to subtract out the first part, which is the 1/6 of the time trying on uniforms. So then that makes it easy because so far we kind of just make our fraction be where we don't have to make a common denominator yet because we have a common denominator. So 5/6 of the practice time would be left after they try on the uniforms, okay? Then we're going to take that 5/6 that we have left, and then they spent 1/4 of the practice on marching, and then the left was for playing music. So now what we're going to do is take this time, and this is how much 5/6 of the practice would be left after they try on uniforms. Then we're going to spend 1/4 of that time playing or practicing marching, and the rest is music. So whatever we get for our answer after this is how much time they'd be spending playing music, how much of the practice, okay? So now let's talk about common denominators again. If here, again, we talked about we can multiply together to get to 24 as a common denominator, but I'm going to go ahead and use 12, okay? If I'm going to use 12 for each of these, we're going to subtract that. 12 can be our least common denominator. Now we may still have to simplify in the end, but we can start by saying, okay, I know at 6 and 4 I have a 12. We can get to 12 for both. So let's talk about that as a common denominator, and then we'll get an answer, okay? 5, 6 would be equal to how many 12ths? Again, just to review, 6 times 2 would make 12. So then I have to do the same up top. 5 times 2 would be 10. So 5, 6 is equal to 10 twelfths. 1/4, 4 times 3 would make 12. So 1 times 3 would give me my numerator that I need to use, which would be 3. And then we get to 7 twelfths when we subtract. Okay, so this is what fraction of the practice would be spent on playing music. Okay, now again, if you use 24 as your common denominator, that would get you an equivalent fraction. But in order to give us all the same answer, we'd have to put that into simplest form. 7 twelfths is already in simplest form. What fraction of practice time? So we can say 7 twelfths of the practice time. So again, if you did 24 as your common denominator, that gets you an answer. But in order for us all to get the same answer in the end, we would have to simplify that, and you should be able to simplify to 7 twelfths. Okay, so there's that one. The last one for this is number 22 that I wanted you to do. We're skipping 21. This one's just kind of showing like how to fill in the blanks. Okay. For this, we want to find common denominators for 7/9 and 1/3. Now, what we might see is we can actually get 3 into 9. So what we can actually use is just to have it be, keep it ninths, which means we would multiply this by 1, really. And keep this 7/9. And then to take our thirds and turn them into ninths, we'd have to multiply 3 times 3. We're going to do the same thing up top, which would make 1 times 3 would be 3/9. So it says, how much wire did Mr. Barber use to put up the ceiling fan and fix the switch combined? So that means we're going to add. Now this is actually a lot like what you'll see on your homework problem, a couple of them, where we're not going to actually, we haven't really talked about that yet in the lesson. 7/9 plus 3/9 would make 10/9. Now for this lesson, I'm going to be okay if we just leave it like that, but that's called an improper fraction because our numerator is too big. And we'll talk about in the next lesson how we can actually take out a whole group. One whole group would be 9/9. And then we'd have 1/9 left over, which would mean we can rewrite this 9/9 as one whole, like one whole, and then 1/9. So this is kind of considered the simplest form in this case. Again, I know we didn't really see that throughout the rest of the lesson. This is the first problem like that. So I'm okay with us giving 10/9 as an answer, but 1 and 1/9 it works out the same way. Okay. We'll talk about in the next lesson about adding and subtracting mixed numbers, and that's when we'll really kind of focus on that. If you get 10/9, that's fine. I think you did this in 4th grade where you would have turned that, like take out how many whole parts you can, which would be like 9/9 would be one whole part, which would mean 1/9 would be left over to be equal to 10/9. And so this is kind of considered the simplest form answer. But again, I know that didn't come up throughout the rest of the lesson, so I'm okay if we just kind of, either way for now is good. In the next lesson, we'll work on how we can turn this improper fraction, again, it's called improper if the numerator is bigger than the denominator, into a mixed number, which is a mix because it includes a whole part and a fraction part. So it's kind of like mixed together, which is where we get those terms from. Okay, so we'll kind of cover that in the next lesson. To preview the homework page, 379, there are a couple like that, that you'll end up with what's called an improper fraction with a numerator that's bigger than the denominator. You'll see on the homework online that submits your answers that I've got kind of like both options. Kind of like here I just said we can do this one, 10/9 or 1 and 1/9. I'll give an option answer where that's like one choice is this or that, which are equal to one another. But again, since I know in this lesson we didn't really focus on doing this, like turning these into mixed numbers, I'll kind of make it pretty easy to see on the homework answers, either or. And then on our next lesson, we'll focus in on that a little more. Okay. So what you got today is to finish this lesson by doing the homework. It's adding and subtracting. Now again, as I noticed this, you go minus, plus, plus, minus, 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 plus, plus. Notice here it's mixed together, adding and subtraction. So just make sure you pay attention to what operation you want to do. I know we're doing a lot of work focusing on the fractions. Make sure you pay attention to whether you're supposed to add or subtract those, okay? And again, you've got a link in your email from me from this week that you can go ahead and take your answers you do on here and then choose those answers on the online form, and then I'll see them, okay? So again, hopefully you've had a good week. Again, I made mistakes. If you make mistakes on homework, it's okay. We're separated from one another. I can't be there to fix them, but I'll promise you when I put the grades in, it'll be all right. You won't miss too much. Do your best on this, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks.